My husband's sister had been living in our basement for 3 months when she decided to redecorate it using my grandmother's furniture. I didn't find out until I went downstairs to grab a box from storage and found my mèmere's armoire. The one she'd brought over from Lac Saint-Jean, the one that still smelled faintly of her cedar sachets, pushed against the far wall with a string of LED lights draped over it like it was some kind of IKEA accent piece. I stood there for a second, just stood there. My husband, I'll call him my husband because that's what he still was at the time, was upstairs watching hockey. His sister, Lynette, was in the kitchen making herself a smoothie with my Vitamix. We'd agreed she could stay for 6 weeks. Job transition, she'd said, just until she found a new place. My husband had looked at me with those eyes he does, the ones that say, please don't make this hard, and I'd said, okay. 6 weeks, that was week 11. I need to back up, because none of this makes sense without the part that came before. My husband and I had been together for 6 years, married for 2. We'd bought our house in Hamilton, a semi-detached on a quiet street near Gage Park, and I'd spent the better part of a year making it ours. I work as a project coordinator for a mid-size construction firm. Not glamorous, but steady, good benefits, and I'd been promoted twice in 4 years. My husband is in IT. We were fine, not rich, but fine. We had a plan. His family had always been a particular kind of challenge. His mother, I'll call her my mother-in-law because giving her a name makes her feel more human than she's been to me, was the type of woman who said things like, I'm just being honest, before saying something designed to make you feel small. His sister Lynette was cut from the same cloth, just louder about it. The first Christmas I spent with them, my mother-in-law looked at the toque I'd knitted for her. I'd spent 3 weeks on it. It was navy with a cable pattern down the middle, and said, oh, that's sweet. Did you make that yourself? In the tone people usually reserve for children's finger paintings. My husband laughed. I smiled and said yes. I kept smiling all the way through dinner. That's the part I'm least proud of, the smiling. When Lynette moved in, she came with 4 suitcases, a storage pod in our driveway, and opinions about everything. She had opinions about how I loaded the dishwasher, opinions about the brand of laundry detergent I used, opinions about how my husband and I spent our weekends. She had opinions about the fact that we didn't have kids yet, which she delivered one Thursday evening as I was trying to decompress after a 10-hour day. You're not getting any younger, she said. She was 27. I was 31. I didn't say anything. I poured myself a glass of wine and went upstairs. My husband said she didn't mean anything by it. He said that a lot. She doesn't mean anything by it. As though intent erases impact. As though I was supposed to just absorb it all and keep the household running smoothly and not bring it up because it would make things awkward. What I didn't tell him, what I'd been carrying quietly for about a month at that point, was that I'd started documenting things, not in some grand strategic way. I just started writing things down in the Notes app on my phone because I needed somewhere to put it. Dates, what was said, what was taken or moved or used without asking. A record that existed somewhere outside my own head, so I didn't feel like I was going crazy. The armoire was the 15th entry. I went upstairs and I said calmly that Lynette had moved my grandmother's furniture and I needed her to put it back. My husband muted the game. He said Lynette had mentioned she wanted to make the basement feel more like her own space. He said it in the same tone he used when he was telling me something was already decided. I said that was her grandmother's armoire. That it wasn't Lynette's to make decisions about. He said I was being rigid. That word. Rigid. I've thought about it a lot since then. There's a version of me from 2 years earlier who would have let that word land and reshape her. Who would have thought, maybe I am being rigid, maybe I should be more flexible, maybe the armoire doesn't matter that much. That version of me had gotten very good at deciding things didn't matter that much. I said goodnight and I went to bed. The next morning was a Monday. I was out the door by 7:15. I work partly remote, but Mondays I'm always in the office. I kissed my husband on the cheek. He was still half asleep, and I left. At 11 a.m., I got a text from my mother-in-law. This wasn't unusual. She texted me occasionally, always slightly off topic, always somehow managing to make me feel like a guest in my own life. This one said, Lynette tells me the 2 of you are having trouble. I hope you're not making things difficult for her. She's going through a hard time. I read it twice. Then I put my phone face down on my desk and finished my coffee. Trouble. We weren't having trouble. I'd asked for my grandmother's furniture to be put back. I texted back, I'm not sure what she told you, but everything is fine. I kept it short. I'd learned that long responses gave her more material. At 2 p.m., I got a call from my husband. He almost never called during the day, I answered. He said his mother had called him. He said Lynette was upset. He said he thought maybe I should apologize. I said, slowly, I asked her to put back my grandmother's armoire. That's what happened. He said I could have been more diplomatic about it. I hung up. I stared at my monitor for a few minutes. Then I got up, got another coffee, came back, and finished my reports. I want to be clear about something. I wasn't angry in a dramatic way. I wasn't throwing things or crying in the bathroom. I was calm in the way you get when you've been angry so many times about so many small things that the anger has nowhere new to go. It just sits there, cold and settled, like a stone at the bottom of a lake. I drove home that evening and Lynette was in the living room. Our living room, the one I'd furnished, watching TV, her feet on the ottoman I'd bought at a market in Westdale. She didn't look up when I came in. My husband was in the kitchen. He'd made pasta, which was a peace offering he'd been using since year one of our relationship. I sat down at the table and I ate it because I was hungry. He said, "Can we just get through dinner?" I said, "I haven't said anything." He said, "I know, but you have a look." I put down my fork. I said very quietly, "Your sister has been here for 11 weeks. She moved my grandmother's furniture. Your mother called me difficult. You asked me to apologize. What look should I have?" He didn't answer. He refilled his water glass. That night, I lay awake for a long time. I thought about the armoire. I thought about my mère, who'd come down from the Saguenay as a young woman and built a life in this country with almost nothing, who'd given me that piece of furniture when I was 22 and told me to keep things in it that mattered. I thought about what I was keeping in it now and what I was keeping out. I also thought about the lease. Because here's the thing about Lynette living in our basement. We had never actually given her anything in writing. No formal arrangement, no contribution to rent or utilities, nothing. My husband had been giving her $200 a month from our joint account to help her get back on her feet. I found that out 6 weeks in when I was going over our budget. He hadn't mentioned it. When I brought it up, he said it was his money too, which technically was true, which is also technically not the point. I'm a project coordinator. I deal in logistics, timelines, documentation. I'd been watching this situation the way I'd watch a project going quietly over budget, not panicking, just taking note. I'd also, about 3 weeks before the armoire incident, called my aunt. My aunt is a paralegal. She's been doing family and tenancy law for 20-something years, and she is the least dramatic person I know, which is exactly why I called her instead of my own mother. My mother would have driven to Hamilton that same day. My aunt listened to everything I said, asked 4 or 5 clarifying questions, and then told me, calmly, what I actually needed to know. Under Ontario tenancy law, the situation with Lynette was murky but not unwinnable. No written agreement, no consistent rent payment, short duration. My aunt said to document everything and to make sure any requests to vacate were done properly. In writing, with appropriate notice, no aggression. I said I wasn't looking to evict her yet. My aunt said, "I know. But it's good to know where you stand." It was very good to know where I stood. The week after the armoire, things in the house went quiet in a specific, pointed way. Lynette stopped making eye contact with me. My husband came home from work and went straight to the basement to check on her. My mother-in-law sent me a link to an article about communicating with empathy in blended households. I still don't know what a blended household's supposed to mean in this context. But I saved the text because it went into the Notes app too. On Wednesday of that week, I came home to find Lynette's boyfriend in my kitchen. I didn't know she had a boyfriend. My husband apparently did. His name was something that started with a D, she called him D, and he was eating a bowl of cereal at my kitchen island at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday. He waved at me. I said hi. I put down my bag, took off my boots, and went upstairs. I called my husband from the bedroom. He was in a meeting. I texted, "There's a man I don't know eating cereal in our kitchen. Is this something you knew about?" He texted back, "D's a good guy, I'll explain later." Later was 9:30 p.m. He said Lynette and D had been seeing each other for about a month, that D had been around a bit, and that he hadn't thought it was a big deal. I asked if D was also living in our basement. My husband said he wasn't living there. He just stayed over sometimes. I said, how many nights a week? My husband looked at the ceiling. I said, okay. I took my laptop and I went to the kitchen table and I sat there for a while, not doing anything. Just sitting. The next morning, I called my HR department and I asked about our employee assistance program. We have access to a few free counseling sessions, which I'd never used. I made an appointment for the following week, not because I was falling apart, because I wanted to talk to someone who had no stake in any of this. Someone who'd just listen to what I was actually experiencing and not tell me how I should be experiencing it. That helped more than I expected. 2 weeks later, my dad came to visit. This is the part where things change. My dad drives up from Brantford every month or so. He's retired now, used to work for the city, roads and infrastructure, and he's the kind of man who says maybe 6 sentences an hour, but all of them count. He was widowed 3 years ago. My mom passed from an illness moved faster than any of us were ready for. He still keeps her garden going, which I find almost impossible to think about without my throat doing something. He doesn't love Hamilton exactly, but he loves me, so he comes. He arrived on a Saturday morning, and I'd told my husband he was coming, and my husband had told Lynette. And when my dad walked in the front door, Lynette and Dee were in the living room. My grandmother's armoire was still in the basement, but Lynette had added a tapestry above it that covered where her paint job had chipped the wall. My dad said hello to everyone. He shook Dee's hand. He gave me a long hug and said, "You look tired, kiddo," which is the most devastating thing he could possibly say because he only says it when it's true. We had lunch. I'd made soup, the butternut squash kind my dad likes, and afterward he asked if I wanted to walk. We do this when he visits, just walk. We went up toward Gage Park, and for a while we didn't say anything. My dad has always been comfortable with quiet in a way I find steadying. He doesn't try to fill it. Eventually he said, "How long has all this been going on?" I said, "The sister or everything." He said, "All of it." I told him. I told him about the 11 weeks becoming 17, about the furniture, about Dee, about the $200 a month from the joint account, about the texts from my mother-in-law, about being called rigid, about the notes app with 32 entries. He walked. He listened. He didn't say "I told you so," even though he had, in a quiet and indirect way, before the wedding, said something like, "Just make sure you know what you're marrying into." I thought I did. When I was done, he said, "What do you want to happen?" Not what does your husband want, not what would keep the peace. What do you want to happen? I had to think about it. I said, "I want my house back, and I want to know if my husband and I can have a real conversations about why I haven't had it for 5 months. My dad nodded. We turned back toward home. I don't know exactly what I expected. I think I half expected him to say something gentle, something about giving it more time, something in the direction of compromise. Instead, when we got back to the house, he sat down at the kitchen table and he asked my husband if he had a few minutes. My husband looked between us. He sat down. I sat down too. My dad is not a confrontational man. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't perform. What he does is state things plainly, without decoration, and then wait. He said, "Your wife has told me what's been happening in this house. I want to hear your side of it." My husband said, in the careful way he has, "It's complicated." My dad said, "I'm sure it is." My husband said that Lynette needed support, that it was temporary, that I'd agreed to it. My dad said, "She agreed to 6 weeks. You're at month 5, and she's been carrying this by herself." My husband said he hadn't realized it was that bad for me. My dad looked at him for a moment. He said, "Son, she has 32 things written down in her phone so she wouldn't feel like she was imagining it. That's not someone who's overreacting. That's someone who's been alone in this for a long time." My husband looked at me. I didn't look away. That was the moment. Not dramatic, not a blow-up. Just a moment of something becoming visible that had been invisible for a long time. The conversation went on for another 2 hours, in parts. My dad left to get a coffee and give us space. My husband and I talked in a way we hadn't talked in months, maybe longer. He cried at one point, which I wasn't expecting. He said he thought he'd been keeping everyone happy. I said that's not the same as keeping things right. That Sunday, my husband had a conversation with Lynette. I wasn't there for it. I was upstairs, reading, trying not to monitor every sound. She cried. I could hear it through the floor. She left 4 weeks later. It would have been sooner, but we wanted to do it properly. Give her real notice, not a rush. Make sure she actually had somewhere to go. My husband helped her find a place in Burlington. He helped her move. I didn't go, but I didn't need to. The $200 transfer stopped. We had a longer, harder conversation about our finances and what was joint and what needed to be communicated. My grandmother's armoire came back upstairs. I put my aunt's number in my favorites on my phone because I've learned that knowing your options is not the same as using them, but it's not nothing either. The counseling sessions, I ended up using all 3 through the EAP, then paying out of pocket for 4 more. Not because I was in crisis, because it turned out I had a lot of very quiet things I needed to say out loud to someone, and once I started, I didn't want to stop. My husband and I are still together. I want to be honest about that, because I know that's not always how these stories go, and I know some of you are going to say, I should have walked away, and maybe you're right, maybe you're not. What I can tell you is that what happened between us after that Saturday afternoon in the kitchen was different. Not fixed. Not perfect. Different. He sees things now that he's made himself not see before. I see things in myself that I made myself not see either. What I think about most, honestly, is what my dad said on that walk. 4 words that cut through 5 months of fog. What do you want? Not what's expected. Not what keeps things easy. Not what makes you look reasonable to people who aren't even trying to be fair to you. What do you actually want? I know what I want now. I want a house that's mine. I want a marriage where I don't feel like a guest. I want to say something is wrong when something is wrong, without needing to build a case in my notes app first. I want to be the kind of person who doesn't wait 5 months before making the call. I'm working on it. And that armoire is back in the corner of our bedroom, where it belongs. Cedar smell and all, and every morning when I open it, I think of my mère, who came to this country with almost nothing and built something anyway. I think I know what she'd say. She'd say, you already knew. You just needed someone to ask.